Good morning. Okay, good, okay. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm pretty good.
Good, good. I saw Faris on just a second ago.
So who?
Faris.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so she probably logged back in. But it is 12 noon or 11:59 maybe. Close enough. Uh, this week, we're going to pay close attention to some topics that center, excuse me, that centers around Black History Month.
Okay.
But the approach that I'm going to take is going to be much broader than just talking about Black history per se. So we're going to really focus on the impact that what happened during slavery, the Reconstruction period, and how it may have impacted overall how we see life and how truthfully we try to please people, we try to satisfy people for the wrong reason. So today's lesson will focus on what, who is it important to please, and who are the worst critics for you. And I think that that gives us a base as we build for the week uh, to really appreciate the topic. Uh, who is it important to please? Uh, it's not unusual for people to try and be people pleasers to people that have been their worst adversaries, uh, their worst critics, not critics in the sense of wanting you to succeed, but just the opposite, people who honestly were hoping you fail. So the first step, I think, is for us to identify who are, who has been historically one's worst enemies. And what has happened over the centuries centered around slavery and Reconstruction and people trying to kind of get a grip on life again is we may have mislabeled people. Uh, when you look at the days of slavery and boats filled with people that had been kept in holding cells and castles like what we visited in West Africa. Uh, the individuals who were being held in those holding cells and the individuals who were being transported weren't each other's enemies. They were all in a common dilemma together. And sometimes that can be lost in the translation, uh, where we end up pointing the fingers at the wrong people and then trying to please the wrong people. In Matthew 6, verse 24, Jesus put it this way: no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. But this is the absolute that Jesus says. You cannot serve God and mammon at the same time. And unless we are able to really identify even in 2021, who are our worst critics, then we may end up trying to please the wrong people. Uh, this is the only slide that I have for today, because the truth of the matter is there are only three opinions that really matter. Faithful people regarding your faithfulness or my faithfulness. If people aren't found faithful to what God has said, to the cause of God, a consistency of life based on God's expectations, then the challenge in life is, why in the world are we trying to please people who could care less about God, could care less about our walk in God? Romans 12, verse 16, Paul writes and says, be ye of the same mind toward each other. 1 Corinthians 1:10, we must learn to speak the same thing. In other words, are we on the same page? When it comes to race relationships, are we on the same page regarding the humanity of people? Do we see people as being people? Or do we still live in the past to where people are only a fraction of an individual, a percentage of an individual, or because their skin, their color is not the same color as mine, then I don't see that person as an individual, a person that is equal to me. I remember growing up and hearing people talk about how even among African Americans, we basically didn't regard each other based on the coloration. Uh, the light blacks were put against the darker blacks were put against the medium colored blacks. And we ended up fighting one another. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter what color black you were. If you went somewhere and you were deemed black, light, medium, or dark, we were all treated the same way. And yet there we are fighting one another. But if we are found faithful regarding this is just what God expects of us, to be of the same mind, to speak the same thing. And then Philippians 4, verse 2, be of the same mind in the Lord. Let's allow the Lord to direct us. And if, regardless of the race of people, regardless of the color, the tone of people, light, dark, or medium, then we understand we are all the children of God. God is responsible for every person being in this world. And as a younger person, and as I get older, the term younger becomes sort of a subjective term. But what I've never been able to understand is how one human being can treat another human being as if they are not an existing person. We all walk, we all talk, we all take in food into our mouths, we all listen with our ears, we talk with our mouth, we see with our eyes, we smell with our nose. And for the life of me, I have never been able to understand, well, how in the world can one race of people conclude that another race of people are less than human? We all require sleep. Uh, we all required to keep up with our body hygiene. At some point over the tenure of life, we all die. We're all born in a similar fashion, whether it's through natural birth, cesarean birth, but we're all born similarly, is what I'm saying. So if all of these things are common to man, then how in the world can we say that some are more superior than others? I have never in my life been able to understand that. So the first opinion, well, not in any sequential order, but faithful people regarding our faithfulness. That's the opinion that matters. Uh, the second opinion that matters is your assessment of your own faithfulness. I've got to be able to see me in a certain light. And I've got to be okay with who I see in myself, regardless of what someone else may say, or regardless of what someone assessment that really matters is how do I see myself? 1 Corinthians 10, verse 12. Therefore, let him who think he stands be careful that he doesn't fall. I've got to make sure that I feel okay about who I am. And I've got to be aware of my own personal surroundings. I've got to be aware of how I conduct myself. I've got to be aware of the opinion that I have of myself, that it's not overstated, but also I've got to make sure that it is not understated. So what that basically means is I'm not supposed to see myself as being the perfect, all-knowing God person, but I've got to have a reasonable understanding of who I am. But I've got to embrace that, whether other people do or not. And it's so strange that even during slavery, during the Reconstruction period, during the period of civil rights, people who felt good about themselves were punished. People who had a positive outlook about themselves many times were seen as troublemakers. People who had a positive outlook about themselves were seen as a threat to society simply because one had a good assessment, not overstated, not understated, but they just had a balanced assessment of who they were. And I would say even today, whether we're dealing on a political level, whether we're dealing on a social level, or whether we're dealing on a spiritual level, your assessment of your faithfulness, my assessment of my faithfulness really matters. Here's a third component of opinions that really matter. We've got to say Jesus's assessment of who I am is very important. Jesus's assessment of your faithfulness, Jesus's assessment of my faithfulness is really priority. In 1 Corinthians 4, verse number 2, first of all, or over the top, at the top of the heap, moreover, it is required in servants that a man be found faithful by God. If we are servants, we can say we're servants one to the other. That's okay. But the reality is, we are all the children of God, and we are the servants of the Most High God. So it is required in stewardship as servants of God that we first be found faithful to God. And if we are faithful to God, then we must be resolved that we're going to be faithful even unto death to God. And if our faithfulness is to God, then the people who are not faithful to God in terms of how they handle slaves, how they handle humanity, and the thing that is really worth talking about as well is people who have very low regard for what God has really given high regard to. Those individuals have a false regard for themselves. It's not based on truth. If we cannot truthfully respect and honor and regard what God has put as important to him, then those individuals' walk in life is really not pleasing to God. Just recently, I read an article, today as a matter of fact, about two preachers who had the audacity to call the new Vice President Harris Jezebel. Based on what? Well, they said based on her position on abortion. But be that as it may, we just had an outgoing president where there were pictures of his wife not only posing nude, but nude with another woman. And he never called her Jezebel. The outgoing president's wife has always had a questionable history, but they never once called her Jezebel. And here's the new vice president, hasn't been in office a month, and already the evangelical community is trying to brand her as Jezebel. Faithful people's opinion matter. A person's assessment of themselves matter. And the assessment of God about a person's faithfulness matters. And when people who are not being honest, people who are not really depicting true godly character, then do their opinion really matter? We're going to build on this theme throughout the week because we are in Black History Month. But historically, we have chased the wrong opinions. But the blessing for us is also historically, we have models of individuals who said through their songs, through their cries to the Lord, to their resistance to being slaves, that we do matter. And because those individuals on whose shoulders we stand, because they had a good outlook on themselves. Others around them supported them in their outlook on you do matter. And because there was a dependency on God, that if the world around us are trying to demoralize, dehumanize us, we know that God is still on our side. And I think that's what we must all look to even today, is what opinions really mattered to our forefathers. Join me again tomorrow, and we'll continue to build on this thing throughout the week. Let me invite you to pray with me at this time. Father, we thank you so much for ensuring us that every person is important to you. Every person is loved by you. You put each of us in this world for a purpose, to glorify you, to serve you. And I pray that as we live in the present, that we can always be reflective of our past, and that we can always learn to appreciate those who gave their lives, who lived their lives in a way that always communicated their relevance, where they always communicated that others were relevant and important as well, and where others in the past trusted you for their validation. I pray today that we will embrace their legacies, and that we will build a solid future for the generations to come, to always know that the opinions of God, the opinions of themselves that are balanced, and the opinions of faithful people are all that matter. Bless us as we serve you. Through Christ, I pray. Amen. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I just hope, trust, and pray that as we move through the week, that we can all celebrate together. We had some breakdown in the internet system where a couple of people were kicked off, but that leveled out through the presentation. And tomorrow, hopefully, we'll have a more consistent internet connection. I'm going to open up now if you have any comments, especially those of you who are on the Zoom call. Okay.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. Family's fine. I hope your families are doing well.
Yeah, the families are well.
Good to see you. See you all.
Good, good.
It makes my day.
Well, the same here. I look forward to this day devotion.
Hi, sister.
Me too.
Okay.
Thank you for our lesson today.
Okay,
Yes,
God bless
sister.
everyone.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
Good
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm sorry I was multitasking. Got a video call that came in and I trying to do too much, but I'm glad to be
That's
here.
all right. Hey, oh,
Look, you're holding it down. That's good.
that's good.
Okay, everybody have a great day.
Same
You
to you,
all
sir.
too.
Bye.
All right. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.